during the Shemitah year, the Mishnah stated that you can't pay outright for the etrog. You can't pay during the Shemitah year for an etrog outright. Rather, by the way, you heard that noise? That is the coffee. Anybody wants anything with that coffee? Coffee's here right outside the room with milk. If anybody uses milk, whatever is available. What do you do during the Shemitah year? So the Mishnah said that during the Shemitah year, you go to the seller and you say, you know what? I can't pay for if the seller is a Amoretz, the seller is an uneducated Jew, you go over to him and you say, I can't pay for the etrog. I can't buy the etrog from you. Please gift me the etrog for the Shemitah. I'll pay you for the lulav, I'll pay you for the nasim, pay for the aravot, but the etrog I can't pay for. The guy says, no, I don't want to, I'm not willing to give it to you as a gift. The guy is, let's say, an uneducated Jew, and he doesn't understand the law of not making money for the etrog, which we'll have to explain what the issue is. So you can tell him, okay, I'll give you more money for the lulav. A little business, 47th Street, right? Do a little business over here. I'll give you more money for the lulav. I'll give you an extra 10 for the lulav. No. That's not enough. 20, 30. So you give him a price for the lulav that he'll be happy with. And that's how you're going to get your etrog for Sukkah. You paid more money for the lulav to get for the etrog. That's the way the Mishnah said that you do it. The Gemara explained why do you have to do it in that way? What's the issue of buying the etrog directly from the uneducated Jew? So the Gemara says, Tosfos points out, there are circumstances that you could sell. There's such a thing there's a prohibition of doing business with payroll shviyat, using fruit of Shemitah to do, was given for eating purposes, not for business purposes. But there are certain circumstances that you are able to do certain types of business with it, if it's not the usual way of business. Maybe the usual way of business is selling a tremendous amount at one time. Usual way of business is maybe the same person that picks it off the tree will sell it. If it's two different people involved, maybe it could be done. There are circumstances that you can do business with certain types of with fruits of Shemitah. There are under certain circumstances, the way if you do it in a certain fashion that it will be permitted to under certain circumstances. The issue here is because the seller is an uneducated Jew. An uneducated Jew, we're concerned about not the sale per se, meaning if let's say the sale was done in a way that he didn't pick it off the trees. Someone else picked it off the tree and he sold it, and he sold maybe small amounts. Again, we'll have to look at the details of how it is permitted to do business with fruit of Shemitah. But the issue here is, what is that uneducated Jew going to do with the money that he received for this etrog? Because the concern is that he's not going to treat it with the sanctity of Shemitah. And the law is that the money that you receive for a fruit of Shemitah has the sanctity of the fruit itself. You can't store away that money for post-Shemitah. You can't go ahead and buy a watch with that money. All due respect, you can't buy the watch, but money that you've got for the Shemitah produce, you have to buy food with that money. Those are food and maybe perhaps oil, maybe certain things. There are certain limited things you're limited what you're able to do with that money. It has sanctity, that money. Then there's another halacha that says that when you go ahead and you take fruit during the Shemitah, if you've taken some fruit during the Shemitah from the field into your house for yourself, right, and you look what the field was left open for everybody, and you took it for yourself, so as long you could leave it in your house as long as there is food of that type that you took into the house available for the animals in the field. Because the year of Shemitah is a year of Shemitah for everybody. It's available for all the people and also for the animals. And once the animals can't have, let's say you brought in the apples and the house, whatever amount, for a certain amount, now there's no more apples left. once there's no apples left in the field, something called biur. Like if biur chametz, you got to get rid of the chametz. You got to get rid of that fruit that you brought in here. You got to bring it back out to the field. And and some say just have to make it hefker, like an omelette. And then you can take it again. Some say you have to destroy that food. So that will be the same thing with the money that was received for the food, for the etrog. Also, the Amaret would have to deal with it as well. As long as there is, if that money is still around, and by its possession, it's like having an etrog in possession. If there's no etrogim in the field for the animals, we have to go ahead and get rid of that money also. And he's not going to do that. We're concerned he's not going to do that. So there are many issues that could happen. We're concerned with the money. Elon, am I clear? The money the seller would receive for the fruits, Ralph, correct, of the Shemitah. And we have the Torah says, Lifnei Iver lo sitei mechshol. In front of a blind person, you can't put a stumbling block. So a stumbling block doesn't only mean an actual stumbling block. You can't set a blind person is walking the street, and you can't put something that he could fall on. You cannot, a person who is not educated in Torah, you can't set him up for sin. And therefore, if you go ahead and you would sell this uneducated Jew, you would buy the etrog from him, you're really setting him up for sin because he's not going to treat that money the way he needs to treat that money properly. So therefore, you can't buy it. You're restricted. You can't buy the etrog from him. And that's why we have to go ahead and ask him to gift me the etrog. So if he gives me the etrog, I got it as a gift, there's no issue. And I will treat that etrog with the sanctity of Shemitah, holy fruit. Is everything clear? You know, everyone's jumping into a new going. Nathaniel, is it clear? Okay, yes.
Well, it seems like the double save in a certain sense, because if you just said, okay, I won't buy it from that person, and you just said, okay, I'll go buy it from the person who understands the laws and whatever the case may be.
Like you, like an educated Jew, you right, correct.
Then you're still leaving him with the escrow, which he will likely eventually sell, will cause him to have some sort of sin in the process. So
The uneducated Jew, if you don't buy from him, you're saying?
yeah, here you're not only taking away his ability to sin, that's exactly what you're doing.
You're setting him up for success, but by asking him to gift you the etrog and being willing to pay more money for the lulav in order to get the etrog on the deal.
Yeah.
Right. We have this concept also sometimes on Shabbat. Someone has a maid that comes over on Friday and Shabbat. She comes on Friday and she stays the whole day Friday into the night, to Friday night, and then she leaves Friday night. Right? So you don't say I'm going to pay, you don't pay her by the hour. You don't want to pay her for the hours of Shabbat. You give her what we do is we give her one payment. I'm paying you for one, and the Shabbat work is absorbed into whatever the payment I'm giving to. You don't specify. You see, they point that out. They point out that Rashi seems to say that you have to be specific to request the etrog as a matana, not that you just go ahead and just give an overall, an overall price and just like we do by Shabbat, and just say, you know what, instead of saying I'm going to pay you $50 for the etrog and $50 for lulav, you say I'm going to give you $100. But Rashi sounds that's not enough. Rashi sounds like you have to be specific to say I want the etrog as a gift. That seems to be Rashi's position. Now what the Gemara gets into is what about the lulav? The whole discussion about the etrog. Why aren't we worried about the lulav? Lulav also grew. It's the fruit that grew in the field. So the question is a lulav subject to Shemitah issues? So that is going to, in halacha, that's a halachic issue. The Rambam said lulav is not subject to Shemitah concerns, but our Gemara holds like the opinion that lulav is subject to Shemitah issues. And therefore the Gemara asks the question, what about the lulav? Why is there no problem with the lulav? So we had a fascinating Gemara that the Gemara said that the lulav the situation is that the lulav grew in the 6th year, and you picked it in the 7th year. So if you pick it in the 7th year, so that lulav, since it grew in the 6th year, it's not considered peirot shviyah. It's not considered fruit of shemitah. To be considered fruit of shemitah when it comes to a tree, the Gemara says, trees you identify by when did it blossom. And the question is, what's called blossoming? Is a question in halach. Is it when it grew a third, or blossoming just when the fruit starts emerging? Exactly what the stage of blossoming is a matter of discussion in halakha. But there's something called hanata, blossoming. There's something called lakita. Lakita is the picking off the field. So the question is, when did the etrog, when it comes to a tree, it's about the growth when it blossomed. And what the Gemara says, we're talking about a lulav that blossomed in the 6th year and was picked in the 7th year. So even though you picked it during the Shemitah, but there's no issue of picking it, and there's no issue of Shemitah on that fruit because it blossomed during the 6th year. So the Gemara shoots back. What about the etrog? The etrog would say the same thing. If it blossomed during the 6th year and you picked it in the 7th year, there shouldn't be any problem, right? That's the Gemara's question. The Gemara answers, our Mishnah holds like the opinion that etrog is unique and you go after the lakita when you picked it off the tree. So if you picked it off in the 7th year, it's subject to Shemitah issues. And therefore, that's why our Mishnah states that you got to go ahead and we have a Shemitah concern on the etrog. So we have an issue on the etrog because there's a difference between etrog and lulav. Our Gemara is holding that one goes after the picking regarding Shemitah, and one goes after where it grew. Natano, is it clear? What's your first name? Albert, is it clear what's going on here?
Yes. So if you were to do this situation on year 5, would be the opposite.
Exactly. That's what one of the commentaries points out, exactly what Albert said. If you would be on the 8th year, we're in the 8th year, and it grew in the 7th year. So if it's a lulav, will be a problem with the lulav that grew in the 7th year, and now we're in the 8th year, because we go after the chanata, after the growth of the lulav. But the etrog would not have a problem. Because the etrog was picked in the 8th year, it would seem that shouldn't be a problem according to this opinion. I saw a little bit in the Rambam. I have to look a little more, and it sounded from maybe the Kesef Mishnah. It sounded like that we might be strict by etrog. We might be concerned both for the picking and for the blossoming, because I think there's different opinions on because we found in the Gemara different opinions, and maybe it's not clear which the halacha will follow. But I didn't spend enough time on that exactly. But that's what I recall. But that's exactly what you said. Based on our Gemara, the 8th year will have the opposite effect. What comes out in the 8th year, I want to pay for the etrog and gift me the lulav. The lulav that grew during the 7th year would be a problem. According to the Rambam, there's no issue with lulav. It's not subject to Shemitah. It's not one of those things that are subject to Shemitah. Now, the other thing we found in the Gemara, a fascinating idea. That the Gemara said that the Gemara asked the question, you're telling me that wood is subject to Shemitah. Meaning you're telling me the lulav. The Gemara said lulav is subject to Shemitah. The Gemara brought a Mishnah or a Braita that says if you have grape leaves, you take grape leaves and you went ahead and you gathered the grape leaves for the purpose. If you look at the Gemara, it's a Mem and Aleph. Let's look at this Gemara on 48. 48:2. Really, maybe it's 48:1. Look at the bottom of 48:1 on the right side. You got it? On the right side, you have 48:1. Might be a little review for you, Ralph. It's a little review. Time with the lulav bashit hanechas shviyatu, right? So it says like this. Everyone got it? Natano? So time with the lulav bashit hanechas shviyatu. The reason why there is no problem with the lulav, Elon, you got it? Is because it's the shishit, it's the 6th year that ran into it grew in the 6th year, and it entered into the 7th year. And therefore, there's no problem with the lulav, because by lulav we go after the chanata, where it grew. Had the shviyit, but if it would have grown in the 7th year, the lulav, kadosh, you would say that the lulav would be holy. Amai, the Gemara wants to know, why would the lulav be holy? Eitzim be'almahu, it's wood. And we found a brighter, and we found ve'eitzim now, and we said ve'eitzim ain't ben b'shem kedusha shviyit, and the Gemara says, then wood is not subject to the holiness of shmitah. The Tanya, as learned in the brighter, ale kanim v'ale gefanim, leaves from the reeds and grape leaves, shegivavam lechova pnei asada. You went ahead and you gathered them on the field. You wanted to put them away in storage. So it depends, what was the purpose when you picked the leaves? We'll focus on the grape leaves. Why did you pick the grape leaves? Liktan lachila, if you pick the grape leaves for the purpose of eating, not for yourself, Rashi says, it's for the animals. You'll serve it as animal food. We agree with too, right? It's interesting. We agree with too. But Rashi, for some reason, says maybe today it's common to eat grape leaves. Maybe in the old days it was much more of animal food. Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it what's inside of the parts of pop? Isn't that what we do? Isn't there an edible component with the blood, therefore it's fruit?
But it's not made. The Gemara's understanding at this point that it's not, even if we would eat it, some part of the love, but if it's generally not made for that purpose, it shouldn't be subject for the, we don't look at it at the non-usual use or not common use of what it's made for. So therefore, it's not made generally for its whatever. Maybe we're living in a time period that we could go after these type. In the old days, they look at a lulav. What do you got? You got a piece of wood. What do you got? Well, that's not ready for consumption. What? Can't eat it. What? We can't really eat this. The lulav that we have is not food that's edible, right? There's no part of the lulav that we're talking about that's edible. So it says if you pick this for eating purposes, it is subject for Shemitah purposes, Shemitah holiness. But if you pick these grape leaves for wood purposes, there's no holiness of Shemitah. So we see clearly that something that's picked for wood purposes is not subject to the rules of Shemitah. So being that that's the case, it's not subject to the laws of Shemitah. So what's the problem with the lulav? We picked the lulav. Now, when the people cut the lulav, or in general, lulav is made. It's not made for animal food. It's made for wood purposes. Boker Tov. And then when the Gemara says wood purposes, Rashi points out, what does it mean, wood purposes? In those days, the wood purposes were generally to take wood and turn it into coals to be able to heat up food. That was the basic wood purposes that generally the wood was made for. And therefore the Gemara says it shouldn't be subject to it's not subject to the laws of Shemitah. So to the lulav should not be subject to the laws of Shemitah. So the Gemara says the following answer. Shiny hatam. There it is different. The wood that's standing for burning purposes, the reason why that's not subject to Shemitah is the Makra lachem la'achla. The Torah says that the produce of Shemitah is lachem, is for you. For you, it sounds like it's for you. For you, it's not specific. What do you want to do with it? You want to do whatever you want with it. That's what it would seem to be saying. But then it doesn't even say it's yours. It's yours. I tell you this is yours. Do what you want with it. But I say lachla, which indicates for food purposes. So the question is, what are my rights with the Shemitah food? Is my rights to the Shemitah food for eating purposes only? Or my right for eating for Shemitah food is Lachem for other rights as well. So the Gemara says, Lachem dumyu dilachla. The Lachem, that the rights, my use, that I can have use for it, can be other than actual eating the Shemitah food, but it has to work in the similar way that food is eaten. What is the way food is eaten? Food is eaten mi shahanata biruv shaveh. Something where the benefit and the consumption are happening simultaneously. When you eat food, what happens? The food is eaten, it is consumed by your eating, and at the same time, the pleasure is happening by eating. So the usage for produce of Shemitah would have that grew during the Shemitah year would have to be similar to this type of use, which would be benefit and enjoy and consumption at the same time. Yotsu eitzim, wood. Now, so what would that mean? According to that, if I would go ahead and take, let's say, wine of Shemitah, I had some grapes that grew during the Shemitah, and I made wine from the grapes, and I want to go in and take the wine and use it as a laundry detergent. So as a laundry detergent, it cleans the clothes. When it cleans the clothes, it gets consumed. But it's not, the benefit is not until I wear it. So the benefit and the consumption are not happening simultaneously. I would not be able to use the wine of Shemitah for laundry detergent, or I would not be able to use it in other types of uses where the benefit and the consumption is not coming simultaneously. So wood, now, we also learn from this point, and a second point we learn, that the items that are subject to Shemitah are specifically items that are made to, the way they're made is they're made to have the consumption and the benefit at the same time. That's the type of thing that's subject to Shemitah. But if something is made in a way that it's not the consumption, the way it's produced, it's not for the consumption and the benefit to happen at the same time, that's not an item that's subject to Shemitah. Meaning, if you have Shemitah produce that's made for eating and consumption at the same time, then I cannot use it in other fashion if it's not happening that way. But it has to have been something that was made originally for the purpose of eating, of consumption and benefit at the same time. But wood, which they generally make it for, or at least this wood, depending if your intention was for the grape leaves they have both ways. They could be done. General wood is specifically for holes. That's the general wood. But the grape leaves wood and the other wood from the grape leaves and the reed leaves, those are done for both purposes. And therefore, it's up to you how, if you go ahead and you pick it for the purpose of food purposes, then it will be subject to Shemitah, because that means food purposes, the animal will consume it and the benefit will happen at the same time. But if you picked it for the purpose of wood purposes, so then it's not subject to Shemitah, because we say that something that's made not for the consumption, the way it was produced was not the growth of the item was not made for consumption and benefit at the same time, is not subject to Shemitah. So therefore, that answers the question. Wood, so the lulav, now, how does it answer the lulav? The lulav, what was the purpose of making lulavim in those days? Was for broom purposes, make a broom. Like we said the other day, China, First, you talk to China, what do they do with the broom? What do they do with Lulavim? Was probably, I don't know until when, maybe things have changed in recent history. I presume they've been making brooms with the Lulavim for all the sort of 2,000 years. A broom, the way a broom is made, the way a broom is used, its consumption and benefit, the Gemara says, happens at the same time. You know? The wear and tear on the broom, when you sweep a floor, you know what's happening to the broom? It's being consumed. It's being used. There's some wear and tear. Just like I gave an example. The moment you use a car is not the same. There's some wear and tear in the car. Yes.
What do we consider our benefit from the lulav? We're getting star after we go up to the next world. Technically, our benefit doesn't come till then.
Right. But the Gemara is looking at from first, before we get to that stage, the Gemara is looking at from a Shemitah perspective. The Shemitah perspective is that in general, when we have all these palm trees and all these lulavim, those they're not made for the mitzvah of lulav. Number one, which we could try to think about that. We're going to identify your question in a minute. They're made in general for what purpose? For broom purposes. Since they're made for broom purposes, the wear and tear are happening simultaneously, and therefore it would be subject to Shemitah. A broom would be subject to Shemitah because it's made in a way that the benefit and the pleasure happens at the same time. However, general wood is not made for broom purposes. General hard wood, which is not these, like the lulav is full of leaves. Those leaves are made for broom purposes, but a general wood is made for making coals. And therefore, since it's made for making coals, how do you make a coal? You make a coal, you take the thing, you burn it, and subsequently until it reaches the stage of a coal, and then the coal is used for it is a benefit, but the consumption and the benefit are not really happening really to make it into it. Right, but the broom, like we said, when you sweep, every time you sweep, there is some consumption of that broom. We look at it that the broom is being consumed, being wear and tear. But when you do the coals, you know, the making of the coals, the consumption of the item, you know, there's 90% of the consumption before you even have any benefit. The benefit is only happening later on, after you cook it, which is at a much later as a stage, step 2, after you burnt 90% of the item. So therefore, it's not consumption and benefit happening at the same time. Therefore, it's not subject to the laws of Shemitah, the general wood. Now let's analyze your case also for a second. What would be the halacha if you plant a tree for the purpose of lulav, for the mitzvah of lulav? Right? It's made for, now the first question, so if it was made for that purpose, and now the first question would have to analyze if the general worldly use is not that way, would my particular planting make a difference? That would be one thing we would have to look at. And the second thing is that when I go ahead and when you go ahead and you take the lulav for the mitzvah, first of all, the benefit that you're having by using a lulav is considered a mitzvah benefit. So it might not be the benefit that our Gemara is talking about. Now Gemara is talking about benefit, it's talking about a physical type of benefit. That's another issue. Like the Gemara talks about mitzvot lav lehenotnim. The mitzvot weren't given for personal physical benefit. And the mitzvot were given for a spiritual benefit. Like there's certain discussion about, let's say, if I say I'm not going to have benefit from a lulav, let's say, right? I say I'm not going to have benefit from my lulav. Can I use my lulav for Succah, on Sukkot? It could be I could, but that's not benefit. It's not the benefit of the usual benefit. It's a different type of, we'll call spiritual benefit. So we have to look up at that halacha. I'm just saying there might be why your case of the lulav, it's not that benefit that you're using is not really might not be classified as the benefit that we're referring to.
It seems like from the case that was brought up before, that like with the broom, for example, it doesn't have to be a full realization of benefit. It just has to be some level of benefit. So it was the same thing with the consumption aspect, meaning when you go and sweep with the lulav, you're consuming that to a tiny degree, but there's some level of consumption. So even when you use a lulav, it seems like there's also some level of benefit that the person receives, even if it's minuscule in comparison to the full realization of the benefit.
But that benefit is total a spiritual benefit. It's not a physical benefit. When you use a broom, you clean the floor, you got a physical benefit. At the same time, there's a consumption of that item. So that's why that's what the Gemara is saying. That's why the lulav will be subject to the laws of Shemitah. Which case?
Yes. Yeah, it seemed.
It's the coals, yeah.
Right, so I'm not sure why I see it's not better at the same time, because you're taking it, you're preparing it the same way you prepare food. And then when you actually use it, which is when you use the coal, you're receiving the heat for whatever purpose. You're consuming that and receiving benefit at the same time.
Right. So the question is the fact that until you get to that stage of it's true, maybe at that moment that you're heating the thing up, the coal is being consumed and you're having benefit. But the fact that you have a 90%, of the time until you get to that stage. If you Google how do you make a coal, they'll tell you how do you make coals. You take a piece of wood or something and you burn it until you reach the level that it's a coal. So the first half hour that you're using that wood, you're not having benefit at all. For the benefit, you're just preparing it. So that preparation is not benefit. The actualization of the benefit is only happening at a later time. If you want to look at the Rashi, Rashi addresses your point. Yes, very good. We're going to end in about a minute. Rashi, you have to burn it.
It's not the same as food, where it's like,
The benefit is happening at that same time. The food, the animals consuming it and eating and benefiting from that moment. The coal, the first 45 minutes, half hour of that coal, making that coal, there's no benefit. You didn't put the pot on, you didn't get anything. But that preparation is consumption, so it's not something where the consumption and the benefit are happening at the same time. Okay, they're going to be going upstairs now for davening for the 7:30 minyan. Want to welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining. It's a pleasure having everybody. I think it's a fascinating Gemara. No, what do you think? So we're here Monday through Friday at 6:45, and everybody's cordially invited. It's for the 7:30 minyan. Morning, Boaz.